I have a gift for you. My third book, The Intentional Design Year, is out, and I want to give you access to read it. To get the digital copy for 1 month for free, go to www.designsuitecourses.com/intentional. Make sure and do the www. Because for some reason, that's the only way it will work. Anyway, this will get you free access to read the book for an entire month. If you love it, you can always go to Amazon and get the whole book plus the prompt journal. Welcome to the Make and Design podcast. This is Carina Gardner, and today we are going to do a little tribute to my good friend, Lindsay Bowerman. Lindsay Bowerman came on this podcast in September of 2022. It's episode 198, which we're going to play for you here today. She also ended up doing a guest expert for us. For those of you who are Design Suite members, you can go back and watch that. But the reason I want to do this tribute is she passed away this last year of cancer. She had been fighting it for years, and she, other than being a very good friend and someone who was active and so concerned about what designers would be doing next, she had an incredible career as a creative director at American Crafts, and she also did time at a number of other scrapbooking agencies. She was just a good person, and I was so sad to see her go. She had been sitting on our university advisory council as well, and I owe her a great debt of gratitude for her willingness and her suggestions for what she felt like designers in this new age really needed, how they needed to behave, the business information they needed, the web development information she needed. Those of you at the university, you can thank Lindsay for forcing the web design class, because originally it was, if you want to take it, that's a great class. But we ended up switching it because of Lindsay. We changed it to a 1.5 credit hour class instead of a 3 credit hour class so that we could fit it into the curriculum. And it's because Lindsay felt really strongly that we needed more women web developers out there, web designers, and women who were creating really exceptional websites. And so just a little nod to Lindsay today. If you lost anyone this year, and ironically, a month after Lindsay passed away in July, I got a Instagram from the granddaughter of my main mentor while working on my master's and my PhD, Barbara Martinson. You'll see an acknowledgement to her in both of my books at the end. I did a lot of research for her. She is the one I taught under. She had just passed away as well, and her granddaughter had reached out to let me know that she had passed. I had sent her the books, and Barbara was more than thrilled to see the path that I had ended up on. She had really, along with the other professors there, had wanted me to stay in education back when I finished, because I was doing ed psychology work that hadn't been done in the field of design before with my dissertation and my master's, and they wanted to see that information continue and the research to go forward with that. But instead, I made a hard turn in the road and decided to start my own design business. Here I am, 20 plus years later, starting my own university, and I can attribute quite a bit of that to Barbara. And so I hope that you really enjoy this episode with Lindsay. I desperately wish I had had a podcast episode with Barbara. And for all of you who are missing loved ones at this time of year, I just want to say that I see you, and you're doing great. So here is the episode I did with Lindsay Bowerman. Guys, Lindsay's here with us today, and you guys are going to love this conversation. It's a couple of creative directors in the scrapbooking industry just telling you all the things that we ran into. And I think you guys believe me when I tell you certain things, but it is great. Like Lindsay and I were just chatting before we came on here. And we're just like,
these are the things, these are the things, right? So if you've been looking to get a contract for scrapbooking, which by the way is pretty tough these days because there's so many in-house designers, but like if you ever even want to go in-house design, which would be pretty cool as well, just doing that. Lindsay and I are going to talk about that. She managed a much bigger team. You guys had an in-house team, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
How big
Yes,
was
we
your
had.
in-house team?
Oh gosh, at American Crafts, I think kind of at our peak, we maybe had upwards of 50 in-house designers
You
working
guys,
on a lot of
that's
different brands.
so much bigger than Echo Park Cartabella because we never had, when I left, we brought in-house designers, but before that, it was like my design team. And so like, it was like my 5 designers for Cartabella, and there was probably like 5 designers for Echo Park. So there's only 10 of us in total. So American Crafts is like whole nother level. So Lindsay, I just want you to talk. Like tell us about your experience as a creative director. Like what I don't like I bet I would be shocked at some of the stuff you dealt with versus what I dealt with.
Oh gosh. I know we probably need to swap stories, huh?
Yeah.
Talk shop. Um, well, maybe just like a quick background for this crew here in Design Suite. So I've worked for the better part of 15 years in the scrapbooking industry at American Crafts for about 10, 11 years, and then with Crate Paper for about 3.5 years.
Okay, were you specifically working with crepe paper? Because I remember when
Why did I say Crate Paper? I meant close to my heart.
oh, close to my heart. I was like,
Oh my
wait,
gosh,
I don't
wait a
remember
minute.
what they what they that was such an inside like that time period of all the
Oh my
different
gosh.
right like and the number of titles that have changed like silhouette what used to be
Yes.
like quick cuts like
Yes.
just all the changes right
Okay, we're just gonna chalk that up to a
close to my heart yeah and close to my heart is like you guys like almost like it is an MLM
direct
basically
sales.
right scrapbooking
Direct sales.
do they
Well,
still exist
yes, yeah. Um, it's kind of been interesting as COVID hit. Um, the direct sales companies, specifically close to my heart and Stampin' Up, those two companies like skyrocketed in sales because retailers were shutting down. And so those two companies specifically, sales did really well. I think for, I don't know specifically for Stampin' Up, but I would guess that sales for Stampin' Up did really well. Probably on a similar trajectory that we were doing it close to my heart because our products were made domestically in the United States and we were still shipping and we have, we call them makers, we would call them makers, but they could sell direct to their customer groups. So think of it as like Pampered Chef or gosh, any of those direct sales companies.
I remember like so there was a time period when I was at Cartabella that I got headhunted by one of those companies and I can't remember which one. I want to say
Yeah.
it was Stampin' Up.
Yeah.
And at the time there was another scrapbooking company who said, why don't you leave and come be our creative director? And so that's why actually it's really fun to talk to Lindsay because I'm curious to see what she does in future because at the moment she has just gone through stage 4 cancer, colon cancer, right? And she's taking a break because she's taking care of her health. But I'm actually very curious to see what Lindsay ends up doing.
Yeah, so like Carina mentioned, it was right around Christmas 2020. Clearly 2020 was not done with me. It was like the last week in 2020, right? Like right before Christmas. How rude, right?
Oh,
Um,
Lindsay.
I know, so dumb. Was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. And so spent the most of 2021 in chemo and some radiation and some surgeries dealing with that. And then earlier this year, 2022, so we're taping the show right now in August of 2022. So earlier this year, found some on my lungs. So I've been going through some radiation and treatment for kind of, I don't know if it's lung cancer or if it's just more metastatic cancer, but anyway, taking a break from work right now to deal with those health things. Yeah, we'll see what's next.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're so smart and I'm hoping you're resting up. But the thing is, once you've done what Lindsay has done, I mean, you're not stressed about deciding at some point you want to do X, Y, and Z, right? It's pretty easy for you to plummet right into that's, I think once you're creative director of a company, because I've always felt that, like worst case scenario, I guess I could go be a creative director for X, Y, and Z, or I could be their head designer or whatever. And so it's like a really good place to pivot from.
Yeah.
Okay, I want you to dig into the 50 designers, being the creative director. What did that look like?
Oh gosh. So so kind of the trajectory of a designer when you work in-house is you'll start typically as like a designer / a junior designer. Kind of those are kind of interchangeable introductory level designers. At American Crafts, we would have a designer, a senior designer, art director, creative director, senior director, creative director. And so when I left American Crafts, I was creative director. So I was involved in management conversations, as well as managing art directors and smaller teams. So that group of 50 designers were broken up into smaller teams, and they handled a lot of our licensing partners. So I mentioned Dear Lizzie, Amy Tangerine, Paige Evans.
Heidi, was Heidi with you guys at that point?
Heidi Swap.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you guys have
Heidi
Tim Holtz or no? Does
No.
Tim have his own?
Tim, I think, who is Tim with? I can't think of who he's with right now.
I can't think who he's with
But
either. I remember when
yeah.
Heidi made that transition because they got bought out. She was actually with, why am I blanking on?
She was with Pink Paisley. She was with Pink Paisley.
And Pink Paisley sold into American Crafts. And then you didn't end up keeping Pink Paisley, right? You only kept Heidi Swap.
We actually did keep Pink Paisley for several years. As of today, I'm not sure what the status is of Pink Paisley. I know that Paige Evans still has a line.
Yeah, I think I saw that because Paige
sure
does stuff for Silhouette still.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about like a queen of Silhouette, right? Like in her scrapbooking specifically lines. Paige is amazing. So I think Paige's lines might be underneath the American Crafts umbrella right now instead of under specifically the Pink Paisley umbrella. So American Crafts is the parent company, and then we have all of those smaller brands. And then underneath those brands, we have licensors. And so the way that our design team was set up was they would each work on a brand. And so that would include like a brand and typically a licensor, brand and a licensor. That was generally high level speaking how our design team was split up. And so you would have these designers that intimately knew what a Maggie Holmes looked like, what a Dear Lizzie line looked like, what an Amy Tangerine looked like, what a Vicky Bouton line looked like, and just really knew the ins and outs of that brand. And so that was really important when you're working at a company like American Crafts. You have to maintain distinct qualities and characteristics when you're designing and building a collection, because you don't want this homogenized look across the board. And so that was a big part of my job as creative director and overseeing all these brands to make sure that each line told a distinct story and it just had a distinct point of view and perspective within the scrapbooking and crafting industry, that they brought a new voice to the table, that they maintained characteristics from previous lines and built on that foundation from one collection to the next, that there was like a story that kind of connected them through the years. So that was one of my main jobs, I think, as creative director at American Crafts, was to make sure that there was differences and separation and between the lines, and made sure that as we brought new on or acquired a new company, that there was a distinct look and feel about that company and that it would appeal to a different audience, because that's what you're trying to do as a business, is you're trying to expand that footprint and reach of who your audience is.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's something designers need to hear. Now, so we worked so differently because my creative director group was almost agency style. So like
Okay.
we hired and contracted multiple designers that worked under the Carina Gardner brand, who then worked for Cartabella. So it was kind of an agency within a company.
Yeah.
Whereas you have a lot of in-house designers. And one of the things I was thinking when you were talking is that it is so interesting because, you know, Design Suite, you guys are trying to market yourself and create the products. But when you think about like the model at American Crafts, it really is actually the opposite. The marketers are the big brand, like the Dear Lizzies or the Amy Tangerines. They're doing the marketing, and there's a whole design team underneath who are actually creating the designs. So it's actually
Yeah.
easier because it's broken out into parts.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was always kind of not the mystery behind things, but and I don't think that it is any mystery, but I think maybe one of the misconceptions, maybe is the right word, is that Elizabeth Karchner is the actual designer on the Dear Lizzie line, and that Amy Tan is the actual designer on Amy Tangerine, that Vicky Booten is the actual designer, meaning the actual pixel pusher
Mm-hmm.
and designer and illustrator. And that's not to say that the designers don't contribute, but as far as being the actual designer on the collections, the in-house designers, the one that's actually working for American Crafts, we were the ones that were doing the heavy lifting and the actual designing.
Yeah.
So
And
we would get a
I think that took me a while to figure out that some companies worked like that, because we didn't do it that way at Echo Park Cartabella. It was like the designer was the designer. And so it depended
yeah,
on the company, and it also depended on how small the company
totally.
was, right? Because like a fancy pants, they're all like the CEO is the designer, right? Like she was just like doing all the design work or whatever. And
Right.
Heidi Swap had come to like one of my workshops to learn Illustrator. And that's when I kind of had figured, I put two and two together when Heidi and Eric and I were talking, realizing that Heidi couldn't design most of her lines. Like she knew
Right.
the vision. And did your people, like, did Amy Tan come in and say, this is the vision for the line?
Yeah, so I was gonna kind of maybe deep dive into that maybe for Design Suite listeners too. So like as we would kick off a collection, we would have the licensor. So it's the Amy Tan, it's the Liz, it's the person, Maggie Holmes. They would come and we would have a couple days of deep dive, and they would bring inspiration. We would bring inspiration. Here's our color palette. Here's the typography we want to use. Here's the point of view that we want to achieve. We would kind of come up with a whole story. Like if this person listened to music, who would they listen to? What's a movie that they would watch? What's kind of, you create this whole persona, right? And that's who you kind of create to. So we would create our design style board by the end of that meeting, and then we'd be off to the races. We would figure out the products that we were going to design, everything. And so yeah, the licensor was very involved in that stage, and then it was a lot of meetings after that, usually on Skype or whatever we used at the time. And they were involved in decisions that were being made. But as far as like the actual design work and designing stickers and die lines and all of that stuff, it would not be the person whose name is on the line. It was actually us in-house designers that were doing that work, the heavy lifting.
So just out of curiosity,
But also to say that they have that responsibility to do the marketing side of it too, right? So like we said earlier, they're the ones that say, here's my new product line, here's all of the marketing, and they had that responsibility to sell it at that point. So
very
go ahead.
interesting. So just out of curiosity with your structure, so I'm guessing junior designers, they probably ended up in a lot of the production work. Is that the case? Or was it your senior? It was probably, yeah, I was going to say, because when we had junior designers, they were making sure everything was correctly fitted, and the stupid whatever on the bottom of every scrapbook paper is like perfectly set up. So was that your junior designer or regular designer? What was your senior designer doing?
So the senior designer often did a lot of the heavy lifting as far as like designing the patterns, designing the illustrations, designing the word art. And obviously like a designer, a junior designer would get opportunities to create some of that artwork. But I think as that entry-level designer, to learn how to set up a barcode, to like understand how the commercial side of things have to be right. If you're selling into Hobby Lobby and Michael's and Target and Joann's, like you have got to get that right. Otherwise, it's thousands of dollars in mistakes.
Well, and people don't
Right?
realize like the crazy little nuances too. Like I remember one of our big issues was that your barcode always has to be in grayscale while everything else is RGB, and it has to be set up differently. And we just like, I had one of my production people like working on it, and like they had screwed it up, and it was just like the barcodes didn't work. And it's
Yeah.
just like, that is sometimes millions of dollars, just definitely thousands of dollars. But it was just like, oh, like when I talk about production, you guys, it's because I am so serious about it, because it will get you fired.
Yeah. Well, because it becomes all unusable product and you end up having to dump stuff. And it's just, you make that mistake once.
Yeah, it's so true. You don't make it ever again.
No.
So, okay, so then you've got your senior designer, and then you guys, creative director is the next one up. And so you,
And then we have like we have an art director next.
an art director next.
And
Okay.
so like an art director might oversee maybe 2 teams. And then creative director is overseeing those art directors.
Got it.
So yeah, it's just kind of that building of trust and understanding. And like, do they have things like the little zip strip on the bottom of the paper mastered? Do they understand how that works? Do you understand, like, can you zoom in and be like, and identify an issue right off the bat? And that sounds crazy to have like such a critical eye, but being critical is not a bad thing because you're saving potentially millions of dollars down the road. So you really have to have that critical eye and just an eye for detail. Like that is such a critical skill set to develop, to be able to just look at something and quickly identify what's working and what's not working.
Yeah. So
And be able to move forward. So
I know so many designers think it really is all about the design work. That's definitely the fun part, right? Like building the patterns, building the collection, building the sticker sets, like that is such the fun part. But the thing that gets you a job in the design world or gets you picked up as a contractor in the design world is the something special. It's not necessarily how good the design work is, but it's like, are you good at details? Are you good at execution? How fast you are, production? Are those the same things that you were looking for?
totally. And like, I think like what you just said, and we were even chatting beforehand, like what is it that sets you apart? Like when you look at someone's portfolio, are you designing in a collection? Do you have that commercial aesthetic? Are you designing for yourself? Or are you designing for the masses? Because, like it's totally fun to create art for yourself, but it's another thing to create artwork that appeals to an audience that is going to bring in the money. Because as much as I love to create for myself, I also have bills to pay. I have to make money. And so understanding what is commercially appealing is critical. And so do you have a portfolio that looks like it all goes together, that looks like something I could just slap a barcode on and send out the door? Like, is that your frame of mind as you're creating? Or is it just like a one-off thing here and there? I'm trying something to see if there's like an example, but I don't have anything within reach here. But I think that was one of the mistakes that I made as I was looking for a job. Like I would just create a one-off thing and wasn't looking at like, here's a hero pattern, here's a secondary pattern, and like a third, like, does it all go together? And I think quilting and scrapbooking have a lot of similarities when it comes
Very
to
much the same. It is different in that in scrapbooking, I feel like you actually have a lot more leverage, like for patterns and building out. In fabric, it tends to be tighter, and you've got 3 colorways, so that the design work has to be tighter. But I think that's why those 2 things have become, my bread and butter, because they go together. If you can think in collections, if you can think about like, especially what you call the hero, I usually call the master. It really is all about like, how strong can you make it so that the rest of the collection is very easy to build.
Yeah, totally. And that's totally what you look for. And I think another big thing that I look for when I'm hiring a designer is, do they have a creative mind? Or are they relying on their tools too much? I mean, Illustrator has become such a powerful tool. I mean, we have a pattern tool now, like that's pretty awesome. But I've seen a lot of people rely on the tools too much and not the creativity. So I can teach Illustrator all day long. I can teach you the tools, but do you have a creative mind? That is so much more difficult to train and to harness. And I'm sure you've probably encountered a similar thing too. You can't teach that. Like, do you have that it factor?
So good. Okay, see you guys.
Hey, did you know that you can visit me at makeanddesign.com to learn more about this podcast and join my VIP group for weekly freebies? I can't wait to see you there.